Let's say good morning to Bob Mazur, who's with us this morning. He's the undercover agent who infiltrated Pablo Escobar's drug cartel and, of course, best-selling author of The Infiltrator. He's back at it again with a brand new in his upcoming release, The Betrayal, a true story of corruption at the heart of one of the most explosive DEA missions of his career. Bob, thank you for joining us this morning. And I told you coming on the air, I would not have the fortitude to do the things you've done. Sir, you're an amazing man, incredible stories. What drives you or drove you to do what you did and get into the type of work that you did?
Well, unfortunately, it was really by accident. I was in college and I was a business administration finance major and working toward an accounting degree, and was looking for a job during the summer, and I found this thing called a co-op program where I could, make coffee and make photocopies for federal agents. So I took that job, and my eyes were opened to the power of the money involved in these massive criminal organizations, and how if one followed the money, it would take them to command and control, which would be a good way to try to attack criminal enterprises. And after doing The Infiltrator, the story in The Infiltrator, where I infiltrated Pablo Escobar's Medellín cartel and what was the seventh largest privately held bank in the world at the time, that was laundering money for just about any criminal walking the streets, I saw an amazing thing. What I saw was that there was a segment of the international banking community and business world that was catering to these criminal enterprises, helping them to launder their money, and basically creating the situation we have today, where it's indisputable. About 98% of the revenue by these criminal organizations goes unseen by law enforcement, and causes these organizations to grow exponentially. And the amount of corruption that has created, and the attack on democracies that has created, is a very scary thing. After I got close to, I think, making some real headway in that first operation, I was driven to go back. And DEA gave me the opportunity. I was blessed with great leadership, great support, and colleagues who really worked diligently as a team to take us where we went to in the story of The Betrayal. Unfortunately, there was some corruption within our ranks that outed me to the leaders of the Cali cartel and almost got me killed. But that's a very far and few. 99.999% of the law enforcement officers on this planet do that work because they want to be part of making a difference. And but luckily, we were able to figure out who the mole was and prosecuted him, and he went to prison for 11 years.
Fantastic. So, Bob Mazur, I guess, we're talking about The Betrayal. That's his latest book about this particular undercover operation. Tell me a little bit about what you were doing, what your role was in this operation.
Sure. I played the role of a money launderer. Was introduced by informants into the Cali cartel bankers who were assisting in the laundering of funds, as well as some of the cartel members who were involved in handling the money. So we would pick up, it's a sad story, but it happens every day in the United States, in just about every major city. Certainly Atlanta is one where it happens every single day, where literally millions of dollars are delivered by cartel couriers to people who have the responsibility of laundering that money. And when you do that type of thing and you launder that money, it has to be done with a very wide-eye knowledge that you are facilitating crime by laundering, and you better be learning about new targets, new methods, and gaining new information. And it's not a good thing to continue to launder that money for the same people over and over again. Unfortunately, sometimes some operations wind up doing that, and that's definitely not a good thing, because you are definitely creating power for the cartels when you get involved in that laundering. I played the role of a corrupt businessman. I was the president of a trade finance company. I had an office in Panama City, Panama, as well as in Florida, and so I dealt with many of the the players in the cartel, and in addition did work undercover in Colombia. So that is a technique that's used in law enforcement occasionally in order to try to seize as much as you possibly can from the cartels and to disrupt their methods of laundering and hopefully identify the people involved in command and control.
You've been on the ground in this, obviously. You've been on the front line of it. I think the question that a lot of folks may have right now is one we've had for a while. Are we ever going to be able to make any headway? I get the feeling this is here to stay. Is there any way to knock it back, at least? I know you're doing it temporarily, but it just seems to grow back. What do we need to do to fight a more effective war against these cartels?
You couldn't be more right on that. You know, the amount of drugs, illegal drugs, on the streets today are greater than ever. You know, nations on this planet don't get along nearly as well as the criminal organizations, the Mexican cartels, Colombian cartels, terrorists, especially Hezbollah, the Chinese triads, the Italian mafias. All of them work very, very closely together to put this poison out, and the profits are staggering. And I worked within the Medellín cartel, it cost $500 to make a kilo, and about $2,500 per kilo for transportation. So they had a $3,000 investment, and at that time, that $3,000 cost would bring a revenue of $15,000. So they made $12,000 a kilo, and they were sending tens of thousands of kilograms of cocaine. One guy that I dealt with had a what's called a pipeline that went from a lab in Bolivia to a factory in Argentina, where it was the cocaine was hidden in commercially sealed cans, along with huge shipments of anchovies, and they were going into Italy and to Spain and to the Northeast United States. And the amount of drugs that are moved are it's hard to put your mind around it. But as far as being able to do something about it, I do believe that it's important for us to work at the highest levels, trying to cut the heads of the snakes off. There is a division within the Drug Enforcement Administration called the Special Operations Division, SOD, and they work on cases all over the world. They've made the biggest of the big cases, but there's only 2 or 3 groups, so probably 40 or 50 agents that are assigned to SOD. Unfortunately, those kinds of cases are not made across the board by most offices, and I think we need to raise our sights a little bit higher. We've certainly. I have a feeling that number one, we're not going to stop it, but number two, the only way that we are really going to make headway, I think, is to recognize that there is just as much important to go on the demand side as there is on the supply side. The amount of funds that are put toward rehab for people who have the disease of illegal drug consumption is anemic, as is the drug awareness. But most importantly, I do believe that there are segments of our society in the United States that are underserved, underprivileged. I think education is hugely powerful, and I think that giving people an opportunity to grab up themselves by their bootstraps and work hard to get an education and make that available all the way through the college level or through a trade education is extremely, extremely important. People talk about, oh yeah, well that's out there. You're able, you can get that kind of help. That's not true. I have 2 cousins who have died from heroin overdoses, and I have one cousin who I worked with feverishly to try to get him the help that he needed for drug treatment, and it took months in order to be able to get close to getting the type of assistance that he needed. And thankfully, he's clean and has remained clean. But this is a problem that hits families, all families. The fentanyl problem that exists in this country today is overwhelming, and that fentanyl is coming from unregulated pharmaceutical companies based in China who work. The Chinese triads control them, and they work very, very closely with traffickers all over the world. And the Mexican cartels are pumping it into our country. And I know we talk about, how do we stop that coming in? At the beginning of our conversation here, the resources that these organizations have are hard for us to understand. I mean, the Colombian cartels have a fleet of semi-submersible subs and some completely submersible submarines.
Oh my goodness.
And tunnel making is a sport in Mexico. I don't know how many hundreds of tunnels there are that are dug every year, and these are tunnels that go, for a mile plus.
Wow, Bob, the clock is catching us here. This is amazing stuff. But the Betrayal, it says it's soon to be released. Is it out yet, or when does it release?
It's officially released April 1st, but you can get it through Amazon if you're a Amazon Prime member and you join a thing called First Reads. So you could get it sooner, but it'll be out in all forms, hardcovers, paperback. I read the audio book, so that'll be out, and also in Kindle.
Wow!
But all that happens on April 1.
I'm on the front of the curve for a change. Bob, thank you so much for being with us. Bob Mazur, our guest this morning. The book is The Betrayal, and it is a true story, and it will have you on the edge of your seat for sure, just like it's had us this morning. Bob, thanks so much for being with us this morning. We wish you all the best.
Thank you.